Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's Max from Mama's Legacy Podcast, and I'm joined here with a very special guest, Cayleigh Griffin. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing really well. Honored to have you on, and as always, I'm joined here with my producer, Cam. What's up, Cam?
Hey, Max.
All right. So, first things first. I think my first question when it comes to think about it, what was your inspiration to get into broadcasting?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I don't know if there was like an inspiration right off the bat. I was an athlete growing up. My parents were both collegiate athletes. I played basketball and volleyball for my whole life, and was ultimately, when I was probably junior, senior in high school, just thinking about what I saw myself doing more towards in college. I was trying to decide if I was going to continue to play in college. And after going through a number of visits for basketball, I just knew in my gut that I didn't really want to play anymore. I knew I had other things that I wanted to pursue. And I was always really big into writing. I ended up being an English major in college. And so I was trying to figure out a way to combine my two loves for writing and speaking and storytelling and sports as well. And that's kind of when I figured out, probably when I was a senior in high school, that it's something that I wanted to do. So when I was in high school, after practices, I interned for the local newspaper in my hometown, and I would go and take phone calls from the high school coaches and write out the little sports blurbs for the newspaper. And I thought it was so cool. And of course, it was really nothing in comparison to what it would lead to. And so that's kind of where it all started for me, was just trying to figure out simply what I was going to pursue in college. And then as I got into college and started to explore what could be afterwards, it just grew from there.
That's quite interesting, Cayleigh. So I know this year, being a COVID year, you had to step up and work the desk a lot for the pre and post game shows. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how it was to work the desk alongside Calvin Murphy this year and what you learned from that experience.
Yeah, it was great. I obviously, when I accepted the position, hosting, filling in was kind of there, but it wasn't really one of the mainstays of my job. And previously, in other stops that I've had, I've worked the desk a little bit, but not to the extent of really every game like I ended up this year. So this started with the restart back in last July, almost a year ago, which is crazy. It's been that long already. And it honestly was kind of taking me out of my comfort zone for a little, but once I started to do it last year and then really had the opportunity to do it throughout this season, I got a lot more comfortable. Working with Calvin is the best. We're actually from like two towns over in Connecticut from where we grew up. So we have a lot in common when it comes to just knowing each other's hometowns and where we're from and relating to things like that. And we were able to build a really special bond. And I work with tremendous producers. My pregame producer, Stephanie, and my game producer, Perry, really helped me a ton. And, I think it's, especially in this industry, it's a lot about repetition and getting those opportunities and getting those reps. And for me, I had almost a whole season of opportunities, if not more, to get that at the desk this year. So I really enjoyed it, especially in this COVID year. Like you said, I didn't have the access that I'm used to or normally would have. So for me to be able to be at the desk and continue to really open up discussions with Calvin, I think was really cool.
For sure, and it was definitely a one-of-a-kind experience getting to watch that. So next, I'd like to ask you a bit about being a woman myself doing this podcast. How do you see roles for women expanding in the broadcasting industry and maybe even further into other roles in sports such as coaching in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, I think barriers are just being broken in general, and I think it's become a lot more accepted to see women in these positions as it should be. There really shouldn't be the discrimination of man or woman. Each person is capable of doing those jobs. I've been fortunate to be in positions working with organizations that have been really open to that, and I'm very grateful for it. There are a lot of trailblazing women in this industry who are showing that anybody can really do it. I think that's really cool. And of course, we're kind of seeing in the coaching world with Becky Hammon being up for these head coaching positions. It's only really a matter of time until she if not someone else, is up for one of those and actually gets one of those head coaching positions. I had a chance to work with Becky for 2 years when I was in San Antonio, and she is incredible. She won the Summer League championship when she was the Summer League head coach for the Spurs. She's commanded the respect of those players. And so, there's still some work to be done, but I think we're seeing those steps being made and just waiting for someone to actually pull the trigger when it comes to actually hiring a female head coach. But when it comes to women in this industry, I think we're really starting to see the acceptance of women in all positions, play-by-play, analyst, host, reporter. You see them all over now, which is really cool.
Yes, and definitely I've enjoyed watching you, and I really look up to you in your roles for the Rockets and all the other organizations you've been a part of. So switching gears a bit, what did you take away from this last season of Rockets basketball? I know it was a bit hard to watch probably, but were there any takeaways that going into next year you're looking into?
I think we're really just open-minded to see where Rafael Stone and Stephen Silas take this organization. It was a year of change and wasn't expected at the beginning of the year, but that's kind of the nature of the NBA. And we're starting to see it already this season with a lot of rumors flying around about different teams and players wanting to leave and where they'll be. So you kind of just have to stay the course. I think there's only the thing that people are looking for when it comes to the Rockets next season is how they can build and how they can continue to improve, what they're going to do with that number 2 pick, which is obviously going to be huge. And of course they have the 23 and 24 pick in the first round as well. So there's a lot to be optimistic about. They have a solid young core, and it's just going to be interesting to see how the front office looks to build around them. Are they going to look to go after some young veteran talent, some young budding superstars? Are they going to look to build through the draft? We don't really know yet. So I think it's just kind of waiting and seeing right now. But I think the ultimate goal is to just continue to improve and ultimately get this team back into the playoffs. And as Rafael has said many times, it's not a rush. It's going to take a little time. It's going to be a process, but it starts now. And this is, I think, where all of our eyes are on are what they do ultimately come July 29th. And then from there, how they continue to add pieces around this young core.
I definitely agree with everything right there. I think this Rockets future is definitely bright. The draft coming up is going to be a huge turning point for this team. And I honestly believe that they will be in contention really soon. I love the way that Wood has stepped up. KPJ has gone to he's going to be an all-star level player soon, in my opinion. And I think the Rockets are in a perfect position to go up from here. One thing I will say, though, as I've just started to come into sports media myself, what is your advice to people that are just starting to go into sports media?
Ooh, that is a loaded question. I think that I have a lot of pieces of advice. I think first is just understanding the industry and what you're getting yourself into, and then like the dedication it takes. I think we're all kind of aware of it, but the grind is unique. It's tough. If I'm being quite honest, it's a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of time away from your life and giving up things to get to where you need to be. I've had to move cross country 3 different times since I graduated college 7 years ago. So it's been a journey. I miss a lot of holidays. I miss weekends. I miss family events. So it's a sacrifice as well. But if you love it, then it doesn't really feel like work. But I just think it's the understanding that it's a huge commitment, and it's really changes your whole life because there's no longer weekends. I work with a broadcasting coach, and she often says that clients she works with is like, oh, Cayleigh has such an amazing job. And she's like, she does, but she's worked for it. And like, these people are out to brunch on the weekends, and we can't go to brunch on the weekends. We're usually prepping for games and stuff like that. And it sounds silly, but it really is a unique commitment to it. Someone once told me also, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And building your network and your connections in the industry are so important. Like I said, it's not who you know, because you could say you know someone, but if they're not willing to reach out on your behalf, then it's not really anything. So it's who knows you and who's willing to reach out for you, and building that network within this industry is so important because it seems so big, but everyone seems to know everyone at some point in time. So it's a special industry, no doubt about it, but it's a huge commitment, and the grind is really like no other. And I don't necessarily believe that people always take in what the job entails, and people from the outside don't always understand what you go through. Social media isn't necessarily the reality. We always post what makes everything look like roses out there, but it's a unique grind, and only those who have really gone through it know what it is. So I always try to encourage everyone to, I try to be truthful when I talk about it, because I don't necessarily believe that I was always told, everything that I was giving up, but I absolutely love my job and I feel so grateful every day. But I know people that have really struggled going through it, and I want people to understand that every day is not going to be perfect, but if you love it and you're committed to it, then it's going to be worth it.
I definitely agree. I mean, the line of media work, especially sports, when you're into it, a lot of the time when you're doing this, it doesn't necessarily feel like work all the time, in my opinion. Mine's to a much minor scale compared to yours. I mean, you're out there on TV. I'm over here recording on YouTube, but I do enjoy this a lot, and it doesn't feel necessarily like work all the time. And I think that's if you can ever find that, which I believe you have, it makes this line of work really fun, and I think everybody can enjoy it. Another thing I did want to ask real quick. So if I'm not wrong, you were with the Cavs, Spurs, now with the Rockets, correct?
Yes.
So you moved around a little bit here and there. Will I say, I must ask, do you think it benefited you going different places, or do you wish that you stayed in one place and stuck there?
I think it benefited me. Ultimately, I didn't really have a choice. I worked for the Spurs for 2 years and my position was cut, so I had to leave. But I learned tremendously, so much working for different organizations. I think it's really gave me a unique perspective as to see how each team operates and how they do things differently. And I think it's helped me now going to a different team. And I started in San Antonio as a digital reporter, and I was kind of worked my way onto the broadcast there. But like I said, they ended up cutting my position after 2 years. And then I ended up getting a job with the Cavs as a digital reporter as well. So this is my first really like full-time TV job, which, people see that I work for other teams, but it was in a very different role too. But I learned so much. And I think for me also in the NBA, like I got to work with so many different players who now are on a lot of different teams. So when we're covering these games, I've built relationships with players on other teams too, which has helped me. I feel tremendously when I'm able to tell stories, is having those relationships with players on other teams and connect them to the Rockets and what we're trying to tell. So I think it has been a huge benefit, and I'm very grateful for the journey I've had so far.
Your journey really sounds remarkable, Cayleigh. So I know things have been different recently, but speaking of those connections you've gotten to make with a lot of these athletes, when you're interviewing someone, how do you make them feel comfortable and have a trusting relationship with you to really get the best answer out of them in that interview?
I think for me, it comes with just knowledge of the game. I want these guys to feel comfortable with me, but I also want them to feel confident in who I am and my knowledge of the game. As a reporter for a regional network like I am now, and specifically with the Houston Rockets, my knowledge of the game and building a relationship with them is what's really important. And I want them to understand that when I'm interviewing them, I'm there to make them look good. I'm not looking to break a story. And I think that's what's really important in this role, is them understanding that I've got their back. So I'm not going to ask them a question that's going to put them in an uncomfortable position that they might be forced to answer in a way that makes them look bad. So I think by just initially being around them at practice, after games, starting with questions like that. And then ultimately, just as the season continues, they get more comfortable. And, before COVID hit, we were traveling with the team. So we were with them all the time. They saw us on the plane, in the hotel lobby. And so there was a comfort, I think, of knowing that, hey, okay, she's with us. She's landing in these cities at 3 a.m. with the rest of us. She's on this grind with us. That really helped me in terms of them understanding that I'm going to have their backs at the end of the day, because I'm going through this with all of them. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything changes moving forward. Obviously, we didn't travel with them this year. Hopefully we can travel again. We still don't know yet, but I think there were a lot of things that went into all of it, but ultimately it's building trust and them knowing that the game, and also that you're going to have their back, and that you're not going to put them in a uncomfortable position.
Yeah, and that seems one of the most cool parts of your job. I think sometimes when we're watching our favorite broadcasters or reporters on TV, we sometimes forget that they're there for all of it and that they're on that grind too. So I think that's a lot of respect to those reporters doing all that with the teams. So Max and I reached out to some of our listeners of the podcast, and some of them have a couple of questions for you to close us out. So this first question comes from Little Trevino, and he asked, what will you miss most about being on a broadcasting crew with Bill Worrell?
Oh, Bill is one of the best. I learned so much from him in my short time working with him. He is obviously a legend here in Houston. I learned that very quickly coming here. He has always had my back since my first day here. He welcomed me and took me under his wing. Any questions I had, he was there to answer. I will forever remember the restart where we were all trying to adjust to calling games off of a television while the team was down in Orlando. And so we were all out of our comfort zones. None of us had done a game like this before. And pregame, we would all sit in the media room at the Toyota Center, and Bill and Calvin would just reminisce on stories when they were traveling together. And I can't tell you, I laughed so hard. We just had so much fun together. So Bill is incredible. He is one of the best people you'll ever meet. I think Rockets fans as a whole will miss him tremendously, but being able to work with him was one of the greatest joys I've had as a broadcaster so far. And I feel just so lucky that I've had this opportunity. He's not going away yet. He's still going to do some stuff for us next year, which of course will be great.
I honestly think will be great. He is a Houston legend, being down here. You can't talk to a Rockets fan and not mention him. Another thing I would like to, another question we had from Rob, who is the funniest reporter or player a part of the Rockets?
Oh, I honestly don't really know the team well this year anymore. I have not met most of the players in person, so I really honestly have a hard time answering that question. Calvin is hilarious. What you see is kind of who he is as a person. I wish people could sometimes see what it's like in commercial breaks with him. We just laugh. I can't tell you how many times they're counting down in my ear, about to go back on the air, and Calvin is cracking up laughing, and I'm doing everything in my power to not just come on the air laughing. So I'll go with Calvin to play it safe, because I don't know these players very well, and hopefully next year I'll have a better answer for that. But Calvin is one of the funniest people I've ever met, and he is constantly testing me as a broadcaster to see if I can make it on the air without laughing.
Well, I can see how that might be a bit of a challenge. I've heard funny stories about him. But in our last question here from Jake, do you have a favorite basketball player of all time?
Ooh, I am going to go with either Diana Taurasi or Swin Cash. And I know that's not probably the answer people are expecting, probably an NBA player, but I grew up watching the WNBA. I was a huge WNBA New York Liberty fan. I used to go to Liberty games when Becky Hammon and Teresa Weatherspoon were on the team. I grew up in Connecticut, so UConn women's basketball was everything to me. And I'm one of 3 girls basketball players, a whole basketball family. So our parents used to take us to UConn women's game all the time. I wore number 32 my entire career because Swin Cash wore 32. And I met her when I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade. And she was one of the nicest people I've ever met. And so I've had the privilege to get to know her now working in the NBA. She works for the Pelicans in their front office, and she is truly incredible. So it makes it even that much sweeter for me as someone, a player that I idolized growing up is just as great as a person now that I've gotten to know in my adult life. And Diana Taurasi, she just became the first woman to score 9,000 points in the WNBA. She is the GOAT. And I have nothing but respect for her. I was calling a WNBA game when I worked in San Antonio, and she was there, and I actually like caught myself not talking during the broadcast because I was just in awe watching her still. So those are probably the 2 that I would point to.
Those are great answers. I can't say I've watched them as much as I should. I'm just now starting to get into the WNBA, and I can say it's amazing, and I'm not sure why it's not blown up a bit more, but those are great answers. I mean, it also must be an amazing thing being able to be kind of working with one of your idols. I think that's an amazing experience to have. But that's going to wrap us up for Mama's Legacy. I want to thank you for coming on. It meant the world that you'd come on.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Loved having you. And take care, everybody. Peace out, and stay tuned for the next episode.